Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody, to the January 2nd, 2024. Okay, we'll run that by you again. Welcome, everybody, to the January 22nd, 2024 regular city council meeting. I'd like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Long.
Present.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Present.
Counselor Runyon.
Present.
Counselor Randall.
Present.
And Counselor Richardson.
Present.
And Mayor Mays.
Present. Item 3 is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Counselor McLaughlin, President McLaughlin, to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 is approval of the agenda. There is a slight amendment to the agenda. We will not be having an executive session after all. So could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor Randall to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Audience participation is number 5. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 3 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer the question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. We do have one member that's already signed up. That would be Mike Kilkenny. Is he here? There he is. Please come forward. Give us your name and address, and there's a little clock. Is the clock working today?
My name is Mike Kilkenny, 1927 Garrison Street, The Dalles. I'm current chair of the Traffic Safety Commission. And commission wanted me to read this letter into the minutes. City manager, chief of police, city council, and the Dalles Budget Committee. At the December 23 meeting, the Traffic Safety Commission approved a motion to ask the city to hire a dedicated traffic safety police officer. Last couple of years, at every meeting, concern is brought to the commission regarding the excessive speeds traffic is traveling on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th streets in the downtown corridor. Excessive speeds, rolling stops, phone usage, distracted driving, and lack of turn signal usage are continually happening, are only getting more flagrant. Traffic Safety Commission believes a dedicated traffic safety officer is imperative for the safety of our citizens. Without police enforcement of the rules, no changes will occur. These infractions will only continue to get worse. City is beginning the budget process for the 2024-2025 budget year. The Traffic Safety Commission believes a dedicated officer for traffic patrol is essential for the public safety. Your attention and thoughtful consideration of this progressive deteriorating problem.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Kilkenny?
I do. So just out of curiosity, it says that it's come up quite a bit, but like how often from people inside or outside of the Traffic Safety Committee?
I walk every day and I hear it every day. We talk about this at our traffic safety meetings every month. Every single month, we talk about problems, speeds, near misses, people not stopping. It's like
Yeah, I've tried to walk downtown. I get it. Just curious.
stop signs, it appears anymore, just barely a yield sign. So yeah, we hear about it a lot. Most of our members do the same. They walk downtown like I do, but yeah, I don't ever cross in front of a car.
Yeah, I know I have the same thing. It's challenging. And I know you guys were instrumental in helping Public Works decide where to place some of those blinking stop signs. How has the result been for that? I know we felt like people, when I was on traffic safety as a liaison, we felt like people just weren't realizing there was a stop sign. But would you say at this point you're feeling like they know there's a stop sign and they're still rolling through anyway?
Well, the biggest one I can think of is on Fourth and Union. No, Fourth and Union is one, then Fourth and Washington.
Mhm.
I believe it's helped some there, but people are getting used to them again. It's kind of like a traffic signal when it turns red. I mean, I see people running those all the time.
Mhm.
It's just, I think until they start getting tickets and it starts hurting their pocketbook, we're not going to see any difference.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that.
Anybody else?
Well, if I may, just to add a couple of comments, we have a good communication line, I think, with the Traffic Safety Committee, and taken a number of their recommendations to heart and have passed those, including some of the traffic enforcement devices, even changing the streetlights in the downtown. I think this is certainly an item that's very much on the radar, no pun intended to what I'm about to say, but we're constantly recruiting for police officers to fill the open slots that we have. We do have a traffic assignment, which is different than what you're requesting, completely understand. But we will always continue to recruit for those officers so we can fill those assignments or fill potential new positions that we were to create. We're also been looking at different pieces of technology that could be brought in. One of the ones the chief and I were just recently talking about with some of our patrol cars is a movable radar. So that could help with enforcement while officers are on their patrol duties. And so certainly not something that's falling on deaf ears, I want to assure you. I've had some conversations with some other constituents and members of traffic safety as well. And we're looking at all those different options to increase that enforcement and provide that response. But I appreciate the letter.
Thank you. We appreciate your service too on the Traffic Safety Commission. You and Mr. Russ Brown, who's in the back. Thank you very much for your service as well. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the city council on any subject that is not on the agenda for up to 3 minutes? Okay, seeing no one raise their hand, we'll move on. Item 6 is the city manager's report. Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of items for you this evening. To start, as you know, we had a number of snow closures last week due to weather. A number of staff continue to work remotely, and we still conducted quite a bit of business last week. But we had quite the winter storm there that really taxed our services and our responses. A significant amount of my time and the city attorney's time was spent with working with St. Vincent de Paul's to amend some of the litigation agreement that we've had with St. Vinny's to allow them to open and offer warming services during this extreme weather that we've been having. That period of time was extended until today. And it's my understanding that this is their last day of offering emergency warming services, and they'll revert back to the original agreement that we had under the pending litigation that has been stayed. In essence, that means that St. Vinny's will remain closed. The litigation's been stayed, and we have exchanged several emails with representatives from St. Vincent de Paul's, I should say, to set up dates for mediation as the next step in our efforts here. Also, over the winter weather, Mid-Columbia Community Action Council activated their surge capacity at the annex and helped with coordination and communication of services and resources available to the community all during last week and longer. The annex, located on 2nd Street here in the downtown, currently has approximately 70 clients staying at their facility. The surge capacity is going to be extended until the end of the week for individuals, while MCAC continues to monitor the weather, the amount of snow on the ground, and options they may have upon exiting the facility. There were also, I wanted to note, several families that were accepted into the annex during the last week, and MCAC has made the decision that they will remain at the facility while long-term housing options are sought. And so they're trying to provide the best service and assistance to the community that they can. As many organizations and businesses around the region, around the state, they continue to have similar staffing challenges and is still actively seeking and recruiting employees, which seems to be one of the biggest obstacles to fully opening the annex. I also wanted to note that I had a productive meeting with Pacific Coast Producers the week before last, formerly Oregon Cherry Growers. having some preliminary conversations around economic support for potential upgrades or expansions they might be considering in the future, as well as some beautification efforts and some concerns from constituents about odors that I received. Also had a good meeting with the Dalles Art Center to discuss deliverables for this coming year, this year, I should say, in the upcoming year, right around the corner. And I also wanted to make note, coming down the pipeline in partnership with Wasco County, an RFP was relatively recently issued to update both the CAD and RMS systems for 911, our police department, and the sheriff's department. CAD is computer aided dispatch, and RMS is record management system. And this RFP is going to be closed in about a couple months, so there's still some information to come. This is going to be a really critical and important upgrade, and it's going to be a big lift to upgrade these systems to provide service to each of the different agencies I just mentioned. Third, I wanted to take a moment to introduce a few staffers who are in the audience today. Oscar Cuevas, if he may stand up, is our new system administrator in the recently created IT department. Betsy Domsick, who is our paralegal in the legal department. And I'd also like to note that we swore in a new officer last Friday, despite the weather. Officer Ramos is here, and I'd like him to stand up and just give us a wave. So wanted to take a moment to introduce you all to the new staffers coming on board in the past few weeks and months.
So we don't require any speeches by new employees?
Mayor prerogative.
No, okay. Welcome aboard, Officer Ramos, Oscar and Betsy, welcome aboard. And I'm sure you'll enjoy your tenure here at the city.
And then if I may, just last but not least, I want to be sure to note the hard work of our public works crews over the last week, who've been tackling over a week's worth of snow and ice, continuously operating on back-to-back 12-hour shifts, not only for snow removal, but also responding to water pipe breakages and having to turn off water meters. While a lot of these efforts for snow removal and whatnot really rest on our street division, we do look to the other divisions and borrow staffers to provide the best response possible when we have these extreme weather events. The duration of this last weather event was quite long, and our crews did a great job responding as best they could to the ever constant and persistent snow and ice. And then I also want to thank, of course, our police department, who also provides that 24-hour continuous coverage and service to our community, especially, again, over the last week's worth of weather. So just thank you to everybody who helped out. And that's my report.
Thank you. Item 7, City Council reports. I'll start on my left with Council Runyon.
Just a couple of things. Met with Jonathan Kara by phone, city attorney, several conversations. Also with Andrea Kloss, Port of the Dalles director, several conversations. And at the height of our negative temperature, worked very poquito, small amount with Councilor McLaughlin, who did an exemplary job helping getting people off the street.
Thank you. Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your work. Like most people, or most councilors anyway, I should say, I probably had a long list of meetings and engagements which were subsequently canceled. I will say, just an observation, I was strolling downtown Saturday evening after dark and enjoying myself when I saw Public Works out there checking the infrastructure and carrying on. So I appreciated the folks that carry on in hard circumstances. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report tonight.
Councilor Long.
Like others, I also had a phone meeting with our attorney, Jonathan Kara. And I wanted to also thank the city employees who did show up for work. I know that City Hall itself was closed, but there are a lot of employees who also continue to show up despite the weather. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then I had a couple questions about the city manager report, and you might not have numbers yet, but if not, maybe you could get them for us next meeting. I was wondering how many people sought out services at the warming shelter, and also how many people we were able, or not we, but the CAP was able to serve at the annex with their surge capacity.
And I can make that distinction. I did get an update from Kenny earlier today that they had a total of 70 clients there, but I can make that distinction between clients who were there and the surge capacity. I think that's what your question was specifically.
Yeah, I think we're all just we were all just very concerned about our houseless citizens, and I think it would just be nice to know how that, and maybe even a short report of how it went, or if there's anything we could tweak for the next weather event.
Of course.
Counselor McLaughlin.
Well, there were 12 admitted to the annex that were above and beyond. And they had a capacity for 10, but they did take 2 more. There were 15 to 19 people at St. Vincent's that were that came and went. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Folks, on Friday when it hit, when the snowstorm hit, and the temperatures dropped, I was involved with trying to track down those individuals that were shelterless. And we actually got all people off the streets, either into St. Vincent's, the annex, the Budget Inn was another resource. And then there was one person that refused to come off the street until about 5 days. And then she finally gave up and came in. So all people in the Dalles for this major event were sheltered. So, and that's because everyone pulled together, including, and thank you for the Dalles Police Department for doing wellness search and wellness checks on people. Also our local ambulance through our fire department. Everybody pulled together when the chips were down, and that's why we live in our city of the Dalles. All right. Airport meeting this Friday. Last week it was regularly scheduled, but it will be this Friday at 7 o'clock. I did a radio show with KODL along with the mayor on Tuesday, and we talked much about many of the events that are happening currently with the weather. And then I did participate in a phone conversation with our attorney, Jonathan Cara. And that's my report for this week.
The only thing as far as my report goes has already been said. The aforementioned interview on KODL radio, meetings with the city attorney and city manager. And again, thank you and job well done to our public works and police departments. Thank you very much. Okay, item 7 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any counselor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we only have one item on the consent agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes of the last regular city council meeting on January 8th. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
By Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Long to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion?
One note, Amy, did you get my email about the correction on the vote tally? You said 4-0, and then in the next sentence said Counselor Runyon voted no. So was I here or wasn't I? Okay. Should have been 4-1.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 9A is a resolution adopting a supplemental budget. This involves a legislative hearing. Public hearing. Now is the time for a public hearing regarding approval of a supplemental budget. This is a legislative hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed supplemental budget. I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report. Following the staff report, I will call for testimony from the audience. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the matter turned over to the city council for deliberation and a decision. So consider the public hearing now open, and we have Miss Angie Wilson with us to explain this issue.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you the agenda staff report for resolution number 24-002. This is for adopting a supplemental budget for the fiscal year 23. You can't hear me?
Check the mic.
Hello. Okay. You have before you the supplemental budget for fiscal year 23-24, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures from and within various funds of the City of the Dalles adopted budget. Oregon budget law recognizes that after the beginning of the fiscal year, changes and appropriations in the budget sometime become necessary, and so allows for those changes via supplemental budgets and budget amendments. Supplemental budgets add funds to existing budgets. A public hearing is required for any supplemental budget that changes a fund by 10%. 24-002 is a supplemental budget for various funds in the Public Works departments, and they're outlined in the agenda staff report, and I can either go over each one of those additional ones, or we're here to answer questions for you.
I don't recall us having a public hearing for this before. Is this because of the 10% threshold that we're having this?
Typically every year we usually have a supplemental budget around this time to just bring in additional funds of projects that we weren't able to complete in the previous fiscal year, or there are possible new revenue sources to do new projects for this current year.
Thank you. Okay. Now's the time to take some testimony from anyone in the audience who would like to testify. First, we'll ask for anyone that would like to testify in support of this resolution. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of it? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to the supplemental budget? Hearing none. I'm now closing public testimony portion of this hearing, and the council may now deliberate on the matter. Any questions or comments for the staff? Councilor Runyon?
I'm just seeing some huge numbers without where the money came from. Like, example, the largest one, I think, maybe there's another one on another page, 939,859 additional in the beginning fund balance. I mean, if we were talking about losses, I'd have lots of questions, but money came from somewhere. We have extra in a number of areas. Where'd that come from?
So I can answer that. The biggest majority of that was from what we planned as a transfer to the water from the water fund. That $900,000 you're seeing is in the water fund. And we were planning to transfer, I think, like $2.2 million from the water fund to the water reserve fund, which is where we save the money for the big projects. We got concerned after we prepared the budget in the last half of the last fiscal year about whether water revenues were coming in at the rate that we expected them to. So we pulled back how much money we actually transferred to the reserve fund. In the end, the revenues came back and met our targets. So that led to about $800,000 more, led to $900,000 more than we had anticipated when we were preparing the budget. So now we're moving the bulk of that money, 800 of that 939, to the water reserve fund to help us fund the bigger projects. So that was where that biggest number came from. It was taking a really conservative approach and an adjustment mid-year last year because we were concerned about whether the water revenues were going to hit our targets or not.
So now I'm confused about number 3, the water capital reserve fund.
So
$1 million
yeah, so
additional revenue.
And that the biggest majority of that is we thought we were going to finish the Dog River pipeline and we didn't. So we had budgeted to spend out all the budget for the Dog River pipeline in the last fiscal year. We didn't finish it, and more of it needs to carry over. We aren't adjusting the budget for the Dog River pipeline at all. We're just carrying over the money that wasn't spent last year to finish it in the current fiscal year.
Okay. And the rest of them are similar stories like that, I guess.
I mean, when
Money was there.
money was there, we're taking our best shot, looking 6 months ahead when we're preparing the budget on which projects we're going to be able to complete, which projects we'll be able to get started and get to a certain point on. And when we don't get as far as we have to do that to be conservative and not carry too much money over into the next year or or overestimate, I should say, not carry, we don't want to overestimate how much money we're going to have, and then that would put our budget in the next year upside down. So we're careful about doing that. And then if we don't get quite as far on a project, we just carry those unspent funds over into the next year. And that's what this process does, is make those unspent funds available to us to finish the projects in the current year.
That's all I had. I just wanted to get something verbally on the record about how that was done, because if I read it in the newspaper with this much, I'm going, wow, money's falling out of the skies. Thank you. Appreciate it. If others, I'll yield.
Counselor Richardson.
Thank you, Counselor Runyon. I had the same questions. That's the answers are much less exciting than I'd been curious about. I do have a couple of additional questions. One is about the sewer main on East 9th and the new road there. Is that the new road that's currently under construction past where we removed the intruding house?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And I just a comment. It would be helpful to see a major projects list for streets, maybe as a BIP in the upcoming budget, just to remind us some of the major projects that are on the radar.
So we try to do that through one of the bills, which presents the capital improvement plan, and we list those major projects in that plan. So if we, and maybe we could do a better job of.
No, it's helpful. I'm saying, please do that again.
Okay, we will.
And it may also be important to note that, we have a new set of auditors this year, and they've given us some additional guidance on the capital improvement plan. So expect to see some additional information and some refinements to what that capital improvement plan list looks like in the upcoming budget, really focusing on those large ticket capital improvement items, and not so much, frankly, on some of the more repair and maintenance or other items that would normally be found in a department's budget. But most assuredly, we'll have that capital project list.
Sorry, I do have one more question. Can you speak very briefly about the process for replacing the 6th Street Bridge? Is there any sort of estimated timeline you have in mind, or can you
Yes.
fill that in at all?
The estimate and the timeline that we had in mind got adjusted for us here with the report that ODOT did for us on that bridge last year. We knew we had, and we had been receiving reports for several years that it required some maintenance. We were doing some maintenance, and we're just thinking about doing a study. In fact, we included funds in the budget originally to do a study and kind of take a really high level look at what the future options would be, what the timeline might be for a replacement. How long could we keep doing maintenance? Last year, though, the report that we got from ODOT recommended replacement of the bridge now. That's why we had some additional funds, and we, through this action, are allocating them to do a much more thorough study that's going to expedite and really do the alternatives analysis and the conceptual design for a replacement. If I was to guesstimate at a timeline, I think our goal would probably be in the next 3 to 5 years for actual construction. So this money will get us started on that engineering effort.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, looking for a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt resolution 24-002, adopting a supplemental budget for the fiscal year 23-24, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures with various funds of the Dalles adopted budget.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Long to adopt a resolution adopting a supplemental budget. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I am now closing the public hearing. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 10A is consideration of an award to award a contract for the construction of the West Second Street Joint Utilities Phase 2 project. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. What West Second Street Joint Utility Project Phase 2 contract will involve the installation of over 2,200 feet of new sanitary sewer pipe and over 1,800 feet of new storm water collection pipe. All the manholes and other appurtenances are included in that project. Several years ago, our city engineering staff conducted an analysis that did the modeling of the sanitary sewer collection system on that side of town and recognized that we needed more capacity in that line. There was also historically been no stormwater collection system in West Second Street, so this project installs that. We finished the first phase of the project back in 2018, where we installed the new 18-inch port water main. We installed about a mile of sanitary sewer main and a mile of stormwater main. This Phase 2 project will complete that effort, bringing the new storm and sanitary sewer lines all the way into Weber Street. It's also going to relocate some existing sanitary sewer line out of the UP Railroad right-of-way and place it into the city's West Second Street right-of-way where we have jurisdiction. We advertised the project for bid. We did get 2 bids. The low bid received was from Ajax Northwest in the amount of $2,149,783. We have budgeted within Fund 56, $1,284,124 for the sanitary sewer lane and $1,199,765 for the stormwater. The bids that we received are within those budgeted amounts, and there are funds available to complete this project. With that, it's staff's recommendation that the city council move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Ajax Northwest LLC for the West Second Street Utility Improvements Phase 2, contract number 2024-001, in an amount not to exceed $2,149,783.
Questions for Mr. Anderson? How about a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with Ajax Northwest LLC for the West Second Street Utility Improvements Phase 2, contract number 2024-001, in an amount not to exceed $2,149,783.
Move 80.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Did I hear 82 or 83?
83.
Got it. Thank you.
There's a move by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to award the contract for the construction of the Second Street Joint Utilities Project. Is there any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11A is the consideration of our goal-setting document. Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet is my staff report. And I also believe Sarah Singer Wilson is here today. She will give us a short presentation about the results of the process that we went through. And the final document included in your packet for consideration this evening. I will try not to steal any of her thunder, so I will just turn it right over to Sarah.
All right, great. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Glad to be back in the Dalles and pleased to present to you the results of the goal setting workshop from November 2023 that we did. So in the slides, just a moment. As you recall, we worked on aligning the goals that you set back in November with your community vision that was set. And so the mission statement that you see here is the one that was developed as part of that work. So by working together, we'll provide services that enhance the vitality of the Dalles. The next slide here highlights that vision that you also set as part of that work. So a community that has involved citizens of all ages, strong local collaboration, green spaces, a revitalized downtown, efficient government, is a commercial hub, honors cultural diversity, has proactive education system, compatible neighborhoods, a far-ranging transportation system, and a comprehensive medical system. So the goals that were set, we did keep that vision and in mind as you You worked through the goals, and so the goals are in support of the vision and also in alignment with the mission. The next slide here highlights the 5 goals, the goal focus areas that the council had majority support on. So while we had a rich discussion about a lot of different topics, these were the 5 that rose to the top. So livability, housing supply, houselessness, fiscal sustainability, and infrastructure. And we'll highlight the actions that support the goals here in the coming slides. So following our work together in November, we coordinated with city staff to identify some specific actions based on the conversations that we had that day that would help advance each of the goal areas. So this first one of livability has 6 actions listed under it. So the goal is to enhance the livability through improved safety services and places to connect and gather. And there's several actions under here. So recruiting and retaining police officers by evaluating market conditions and department resources to be competitive and ensure proper staffing. Evaluating technology and software and other tools for efficiency of all departments, reviewing and updating animal control ordinances and contracts, advancing the work on the downtown plaza and partner with the Urban Renewal Agency, maintaining funding for sidewalk rehabilitation, ADA replacement programs, and then the 6th one there, expanding efforts to foster more community engagement, education, participation, in local government. And so those are the actions that staff identified. We'll talk more about the implementation structure at the end, but the idea with identifying all of these actions, there will also be a project lead assigned to each one that will work to move the implementation forward. The next goal here, housing supply. So be leaders in expanding the city's housing supply and diversity of options. Working with staff, there were 5 actions identified here to support this goal. So in alignment with Mid-Columbia Housing, identify legislative ask and support. And again, this is kind of in reference to the advocacy discussion that we had that day, and to help move some of your desired housing goals forward. The second one there is engage and partner with Mid-Columbia Housing to support the long-term affordable attainable housing developments through your funding, your infrastructure, or property development. And then the third one is completing your housing production strategy and then using that to inform future goals. And then 2.4, evaluate a tiered system to the SDC charges. And then the 5th one there is completing those infrastructure projects that support the dense housing development in alignment with your master plan. So those are the 5 actions. Some of those we talked about specifically in the workshop, and others that are things that staff have been working on or in the works that will help support that goal. Any questions about any of these so far? Stop if there's any specifics as we move through the goal areas. Okay. Next one here, around houselessness. So the goal is to mitigate the immediate impacts of houselessness and then improve access to the wraparound services for people experiencing houselessness. So that first action is working in alignment with Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, identify the legislative ask and support. So again, the advocacy work piece of it. 3.2 is consistently tagging and abating camps and other debris within the right-of-way or on public property, and then encouraging private property owners to do the same. 3.3 is then this funding support to programs such as Mid-Columbia Center for Living, street outreach response efforts, and so working with some of your partners to address the access to medical and behavioral health services. And then in addition, there's a few more for houselessness. So strengthen the regional partnership with staff and council, participating in housing summits, town halls, other opportunities around housing, mental, and other wraparound services. Continuing to proactively inform the community about update strategies and projects. evaluating and determining if and how the city can provide funding for or other support for new alternative services. And then the last one there is inviting community partners to present to the council on the community as far as recent successes or other work around houselessness projects, challenges, et cetera. And then the next goal, fiscal sustainability. So achieving fiscal sustainability in the near and long term through planning and policy development. So we had a lot of conversation around what you all could do to support this goal. There's 5 actions listed here. So facilitate the discussion or work session to prepare resolution or other policy guidance for the allocation process for the Google revenue that will be coming into the city. The second one is the same, facilitate that discussion or work session to evaluate tourism goals and how your transient room tax can be allocated to achieve those goals. Let's see, and then maintaining an unappropriated ending fund balance equal to 4 months operating and 10% contingency, finalizing your IGA with Wasco County Library District, and then facilitating a discussion or work session about entering into franchise agreements with entities in that utilize the right of way. Okay, keep moving. Next goal here. Infrastructure. So a couple here for infrastructure, develop a long-term plan that supports sustainable infrastructure that meets current and future community needs. So the first one was in reference to the citywide facility master plan, which would include city-owned public infrastructure and your buildings. And then the second one under infrastructure is to prioritize adequate funding to support the completion of projects in your public works master plans. So that's an overview of the goals and actions. These are intended to be 2-year goals with a check-in after the first year of implementation to just, again, hear about the progress updates as well as any challenges that staff might be encountering in advancing the goals, and then giving the council an opportunity to do any refinement that might be necessary. So that's the idea for implementation. You would also receive, staff is proposing quarterly updates to the council to keep you apprised of regular progress on the goals. And then if there's additional council direction needed at that time, that it would be, a great opportunity during those updates to give staff direction as needed. And then at the end of the year, Matthew would be putting together an annual report on the goals to not only share with the council, but also to highlight the accomplishments to the community. And then get you ready and geared up to do a refinement process as you think about and are able to reflect on the progress that you've made over the course of the year. So that's the structure. Again, it's with the implementation pieces, it's intended to keep it alive and to really make it a living, working system, and foster that accountability with staff and the council, and the community, of course. So with that, I'll just open it up for any other questions or comments that you have.
Questions or comments?
I have a couple of comments when it's appropriate, and if that's now, I'll make them.
I think that it's appropriate we do it now.
Thank you. As you know, I've leaned into this in the last few years, the idea of setting some goals, and maybe has not always been a popular idea, but I think it's good to be aspirational, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness and serious participation by my fellow counselors and staff. I feel like this was a really beneficial retreat or meeting, and I encourage people, sort of the rest of the citizenry, to take a look. I think it's a really useful and thoughtful document, and so I just want to say thank you for making this happen.
Anybody else? Counselor McLaughlin.
Effective planning is essential for the quality of any organization. And I've been at organizational endeavors for many, many years. And I might say that this was the best overall presentation, implementation of a planning that happened during this day. It was an all-day event. And by the way, thank you very much for your leadership. It was great.
Yeah, I would echo those words, Sarah. I thought you did a great job, and I thought it was very productive. It seemed like 24 hours, but it was shorter than that, right?
Even the charts on the wall.
Yes. Counselor Long.
Yeah, well, I'll just echo that as well. And that you have a unique style of presentation, a little artistic along with the seriousness. So that was very nice, and some good icebreakers, which I normally hate icebreakers. So kudos to you for that. I also really appreciate how you followed up apparently with the city manager and getting the staff goals to line up with our policy, because that's one thing that we have a really tough time in the past with, is that sometimes council members wanted to delve a little too deep and be too specific to staff, and that's not really our role. So I really appreciated you guiding us and keeping us up at the policy level, and then working and bringing back things that when I look at it, it's like, yes, that is exactly what I would want our staff to do to achieve the vision that we all had together. And so thank you for that. And thank you for traveling in this really bad weather. It shows your dedication to our community. Thank you.
Anybody else? Comments? Counselor Runyon?
I hate these things. And it's up to us to make it not become another piece of paper that goes into the drawer, and to actually use it. And it was very well done. And 22 years I've been sitting through these different things and different positions. And this was very well done. And I will tell you that today I got a question about the process and whatnot, and recommended you to another entity here in our community, and we'll make sure you get contacted on that.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on our visioning and goal setting process? Anybody? Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Nichols, 1617 Oregon Street. I just want to say that as a reporter, I've been covered a lot of these things. We're ace on this one. This is one of the best, and for a long all-day session, didn't feel some of the time, but most of the time it didn't feel like an all-day session. This is really superior work. Thank you. And by the way, I have photos of that, which you give me email, I'll send them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment? Okay, with that, I'm looking for a motion.
I'd be happy to make that motion. Mr. Mayor, if I can find the scroll to the right page here.
$78.
I move to adopt the 2024 City Council goal setting documentation.
And that,
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Long to adopt the goal setting document. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you. And I wish you guys much success as you move your goals forward. I look forward to hearing about all the great things you guys have done for the Dalles here in a year. So
Thank you.
Sarah.
Item 11B is an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Wasco County District Attorney's Office. Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet today is a brief staff report summarizing an intergovernmental agreement that was adopted through resolution number 19-010 associated with the transfer of jurisdiction for certain criminal misdemeanor cases from the city's municipal court to the Wasco County Circuit Court. That resolution authorized the execution of the IGA under discussion tonight. In essence, this IGA initially committed the city of the Dalles to provide an annual payment to the Wasco County District Attorney's Office starting in fiscal year 1920 of about $80,000. Annually, this amount increases by 3%. And so in this most recent cycle, we transferred $92,743 and change to the District Attorney's Office to assist the county with the additional costs of prosecution of misdemeanor criminal charges with the Wasco County Circuit Court, and to mitigate the impact of the transition of those services from municipal court to the District Attorney's Office. As I noted in the IGA, in my staff memo, per the Oregon law and as detailed in the IGA itself, District attorneys have the responsibility and discretion for the prosecution of these misdemeanor cases and requires the district attorney to do so. There is not a requirement that the city provide funds of this nature to support those services. And over the last 5 years, we've transferred a little over $400,000 to the Wasco County's office, district attorney's office, to mitigate those court transition impacts and to support the services they provide. But again, long-term, this is not a requirement. Staff conducted a bit of outreach with the OCCMA listserv, the city attorney's listserv, as well as communicating with a variety of other cities to see if any other city provides funds of this nature from the general fund. We were unable to locate any. And so this item also came up during the city's budget process last year. There were several questions from the city council about this IGA, how long it would continue, how often do we provide these funds, and why. And so considering it's been about 5 years since this transfer has occurred, we provided funding each of those years. We're not required to, and we have an upcoming city budget process coming up ahead of us. I wanted to bring this item to the city council to get your guidance and input on whether or not this IGA should remain in effect and in place, or if we should consider terminating it. There's a pretty lengthy, at the time, 6-month notification period if we do intend to terminate that. When we removed this item from the agenda back in December and allocated and changed it to January, we did have a very brief amendment amending that notification period to give us enough time to pull together some of this information, take into account some of the difficulties we were having in December, and to have the district attorney here tonight. So with that amendment, if we elect to terminate the IGA tonight, we have to provide notice by February 1st. So there is a shot clock on this. If we don't terminate the agreement, we will budget for a transfer of these funds per the IGA, and it will remain in effect going forward. We could consider it at a different time. Looking at my budget implications, I think I summarized it for you already. If you let me know if you have any questions on that front. This morning, or last night, I should say, I received a report from the district attorney that was included via email to you this morning, and his copy was provided on your table here this evening. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The district attorney is with us this evening, and Mr. Mayor, I think it would be, of course, appropriate to have any comments that he may have as well, or to highlight any particular things in his report that he provided us previously.
Would the council like to hear from Mr. Ellis now, or would you like to ask questions first? Mr. Ellis, would you like to?
I put together a brief report, about 6 pages, and it was just what I wanted to outline is just to show what the office does and to outline that what our staffing is right now. Currently, we're staffed at 10 water employees, and that does not include me. I'm a state employee. The district attorney's office is kind of an odd entity that we prosecute for the state of Oregon. We prosecute under state statutes, and the state of Oregon provides only grant funding to our victim advocacy office and salary of the elected district attorney as a state employee. Everybody else in the office is a county employee. We're in county office space. It's basically a county office that's working for the state. I was not a part of the IGA when it was created. That was the previous administration. When the court closed, or when the city court closed, my understanding was that it was going to transfer a lot of misdemeanors over, and the amount of money that was given by the city to the district attorney's office didn't, it was more than enough to fund a staff position, but it was not enough to fund an attorney position when you consider salary, county benefits on top of that. So when I came into office, there was a paralegal position that was in place. Paralegal is something that is not really needed for a criminal or either prosecuting or defense office. It's more of a person that can actually write motions and is a quasi attorney. So it didn't seem like it was a necessary position. It was an overpaid staff member. My perspective when I took over, and fortunately for me, that person decided to leave the office when I took office. So instead of just reposting that position, I took the money that the city was giving us. We had some increase in funding from the county, was able to lower that position to a legal secretary position, and we had enough money to also hire an attorney at the same time. So that money just goes into our general fund, and we allocate it to different positions. What is from looking at the money in the budget, if this money does not come into my budget, we will have to make the tough decision without finding any other resources to cut one of those deputy district attorney or legal secretary positions. I don't know what that would do with that money. What that would do would be discussion we'd have to have with the county, with my staff, try to figure out where we'd have to do with losing a staff position. It's not a big office, so losing either one would be a blow to our daily productivity. I included some charts in there towards the end that kind of show the increase casework that that's not having this city court has caused with us. Not just with us referrals from the Dallas City Police, but also from the amount of cases that we charge out in a given year. And it's over the past 3 years since I've been in office, consistently, our referrals and our case count have been slightly over 60% cases that come from the city of the Dallas Police. So we are getting the not quite super majority, but very much the majority of our cases from the Dallas City Police. City Manager Klebs did mention that there weren't able to find any other cities that have this kind of agreement, or IGAs with other counties. When City Manager Klebs informed me that this was going to be on an agenda back in December, I was actually at the Oregon District Attorneys Association conference and asked around a bit. There was mention from District Attorney Haroldson from Benton County that they have an agreement. It's not quite an IGA, but the city of Corvallis does provide funding to Benton County District Attorney's Office to prosecute their DUIs there, just because those are complicated misdemeanors that they wanted to give to the DA's office. I also had a conversation with DA Primus out in Umatilla County, who had said that when the city of Hermiston had shut down their municipal court, they thought that there was going to be an agreement in place where Hermiston going to provide money to the Umatilla County DA's office. That was not followed through on, and it really created a burden on that office where it sounds like they were backed up pretty good ways on their charging for the cases that came in. They were people that were cited but not arrested, and they got backed up on their charging pretty significantly because of work that was coming in that they just didn't have the staff to handle. Hermiston did put their muni court back into effect at the beginning of the year, which took a significant burden off that office. There is some precedent of other DA's offices when they were just short of staffing that they had to stop charging certain districts. Really unfortunate issue in 2022 in the Lane County DA's office where DA Patty Curlow had to put out an announcement that they were not charging non-person misdemeanors up to even non-person C felonies because they had lost 6 attorneys in that office. And they just could not handle that. So that has changed now. They managed to get their staffing back up on that, but that has been issues in the past. As I mentioned in the memo, even if we have to lose a position in our office, we will do everything we can to charge every case that comes into our office. I don't anticipate that kind of situation that happening. I would anticipate possibly something that might happen. Full County will be cited. So that could be a different office, but it would be difficult. I also had a conversation with DA Rasmussen out in Hood River County. Hood River County also shut down their municipal court, and DA Sewell, when he was in office, didn't go advocate for an IGA like Wasco County did with the city of the Dalles, and it really impacted the Hood River office and their case counts. And I know DA Rasmussen, she did an incredible job. She took over with that office and dealing with the caseloads that they were having over there. So they did keep up. I know from having many conversations with her that really impacted their ability. So I agree with City Manager Klebs. The city does not. There's no obligation to provide this money to the DA's office. So I didn't anticipate my report to be solicitous here. I just wanted to give an overview of what prosecuting a criminal case looks like and give a few numbers and graphs about what our case counts have and how they've increased since that has all the misdemeanors in the city Instead of being. If anybody needs any clarifications on those graphs, it'd be happy. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to thank the district attorney for putting together that information and giving us that overview. It was helpful for me. I'm hopeful that, and assuming that it's helpful for the council and for anybody who looks at our agenda packets, it's something that we can share in the minutes coming forward. And the only correction or additional information I would provide is that in our conversations with the city of Corvallis with the DUII cases, as we understand it, the city doesn't provide a transfer of general funds associated with those cases. It's the fines generated by those cases that was the associated revenue with it. Just a clarification point. I had conversation with Thea Harrelson, and we're trying to get the nuance of it. Yeah, I appreciate the effort though.
Okay, questions for either Mr. Klebs or Mr. Ellis? Counselor Runyon.
Kind of a question, but just a statement as well. So we understand it, Mr. Klebs, is that this is a time right now with time and date certain that we can terminate the contract, but then we could actually take it up in the budget process and decide if that's something the budget committee wants to go forward with at that time. If we don't make a move now, it automatically continues until 2025. Is that correct?
Correct. So if there is no action tonight, the IGA will remain in place and we will budget to transfer the associated money.
Point you made earlier, I think, is that, by terminating it now, giving notice, you mentioned the budget committee had concerns last year, and maybe that's one way of letting the budget committee and a lot of those same members return, would have the opportunity to discuss it at a fuller length about what the good pieces are of it and whatever about the contract. But if we don't do that, it's 2025.
Yes, I mean, the notification period that we have, even with the First Amendment, sets us at February 2nd as that deadline to terminate.
Yeah.
If we choose to terminate, if there's additional, and of course for me, the door is open to have that continued conversation around what makes sense and as a community partner and to support one another in these and other efforts. Those conversations could certainly be held at the budget committee or with our offices, for the duration. I mean, long beyond this next cycle. I think for a lot of the partnering organizations we have in this community, that door is always open to discuss and brainstorm ways we can work together and provide that kind of partnership. But if we, and that conversation could occur even if we don't terminate it. But if we don't terminate it this evening, we'll have to budget in this next cycle for it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Counselor Richardson.
Thank you, DA Ellis, for writing this report, providing that. And can I ask staff to either append this to our city council packet or otherwise put it online so that any interested residents can take a look at it? And I guess a comment, sort of maybe a higher level comment. I just personally feel that silos between some of our agencies is a limiting factor at times in our community. And that said, and to sort of follow up on Mr. Klebs' comments, there are a number of goals in our goal setting document, which are things that we should be reaching out and looking for partners to be involved with. Right? A number of economic development, animal control, and just other areas that we should or would be wise to look at partnering with urban renewal and the county and port and other entities to achieve. But I just cannot get past two facts. And one is that both our city and county are pretty fiscally healthy. And the second is that this is really the county's responsibility to fund. So I just am having a hard time getting over why we would do this in perpetuity. City manager's report lays out the idea that this was supposed to be sort of bridge funding or soften the impact of moving the municipal court or getting rid of the municipal court, putting those responsibilities back on the district attorney's office. And that's been 4.5 years. I guess I feel like if that's true, if that's how council understood it at the time, then it's, we have to sunset that provision at some point. And given the 6-month or 5-month advance that we need to offer, and that both the city and the county are starting our budget processes, this seems like the right time to be pretty serious about doing that.
Anybody else?
Sure.
Well,
Yeah, so thanks for the report. Unfortunately, I work full time and did not have a chance to read this today. So I apologize for that. But at the same time, I just want to say that, that has some impact on my thinking for this whole process. I've been giving it a lot of thought since the city manager brought it forward. And I was present when the agreement was agreed to by council. And it was my understanding at the time that, it was more like this was something we were doing to ease the transition, and it was a good cooperative effort, but I don't think we ever thought that it was going to be in perpetuity. Personally, at this point, I think I am thinking along the same lines as Councilor Runyon that, that we should take this opportunity while the deadline is coming up to go ahead and close out the agreement, but to continue negotiating or considering what a new agreement would look like that suits both parties well. The Dalles is obviously the county seat, and it's a very large portion of the population of Wasco County. We have our own police department. Other cities don't. That reflects on what is referred in to your office. So yes, a lot is coming from the Dalles, but that's kind of the nature of the beast, if you will. So those are my thoughts.
Any other comments or questions?
I think
I had one, but did you want to say something?
just really briefly, as both counselors have pointed out, one aspect of this was the transition of court during that period of time. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there was an indicator in the IGA of the long-term nature of this agreement, and to provide that kind of support for some period of time. I think, and maybe the Councilor Long can shed any light on, at the time it was adopted, if there was any consideration to what that long-term comment made, if 5 years is a long enough period of time to provide that support for both the transition and the additional burden. I just wanted to point that out as one of the recitals in the IGA itself, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it.
So I guess what I could comment on that is that my recollection or my understanding when I started talking about this was that we weren't told that it was an option or that it was the county's responsibility. And so it was sort of presented to council as this is something we must do. And after learning that it wasn't, that changed my perspective on things. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing something. I'm just not sure that we should be doing this. And I'm not sure that council, I certainly did not, as a council member, understand what we were agreeing to. Yeah, I'm eye contact with you, but not, yeah, right.
Any other comments or questions? I agree with the last sentence that Councilor Long stated. I was just when I took over being mayor, and I didn't understand that we had a choice in the matter. I do have a question about, you have about a $1.1 million budget, and $100,000 comes from a grant.
Yes, those are, we have two grants, the VOCA and the CAMI grant, and those are for victims.
Okay, the rest of the $1 million comes from, are you a department of the general fund, or is it a transfer from the general fund into your office and you have a?
We're the part of the general fund.
Okay.
And that also doesn't get, that does not, I'm weird office. I am a state employee. I'm the only state employee in that office. So my salary does not come out of that general fund.
Right.
That's the one salary that's coming from the state of Oregon. Everything else is just the grants from the state. So I would also think everybody else room would be in agreement that the state's probably not offices around higher state in every 36 counties because represent the state. And And the state has basically put that burden on all the counties. From a lot of the conversations that I didn't mention at the Oregon District Attorneys Association is I think that this, when I mentioned this, because it came up just as I was getting there, that it's, I think that there's some other larger a brief conversation with DA Kevin Barton out in Washington County. Beaverton has a massive municipal. The Beaverton, the city of Hillsborough does not. And DA Barton was mentioning to me for them with all those extra misdemeanors. The Beaverton and Hillsborough is not chipping in county. City Manager Klebs had mentioned all those other cities are not, and it's. I think this is going to become a big topic with counties and cities now, seeing how offices be completely financed by the counties across the state and having staffing. So I think this is we might be just ground zero for larger conversations.
I guess the point I was making is that through the budget process that's coming up in a few months, Wasco County, like the city of the Dalles, is going to be enjoying, some additional revenues. And perhaps during the budget process, if this goes through, Wasco County can, the DA's office can make their case to the Board of Commissioners to increase their budget.
Yeah, so
through the general fund.
that is another option. This came up first. Like I
Right.
do appreciate the council delaying this because I had a family emergency, had a vacation plan at the end of December. I wasn't able to. So I do appreciate it. So. Note in.
And thank you for the report. Anybody else?
I have a question, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but there were 3 counselors here. And if you could clarify, Counselor McLaughlin, Counselor Runyon, your thought on whether this was supposed to be long-term in perpetuity or transitory, or give us some sense of the history in your understanding of it. That would be helpful because I'm feeling a little torn. There's a sentence in here that says it's supposed to be long-term and yet it's completely voluntary.
Interesting. So this is my 6th year, so I guess I was there.
I don't think you were there.
Yeah, he was.
Was he? It was the start of Julie Kruger's tenure,
Right.
and she was introduced it to our council. We reviewed it. It seemed like at the time, it's something that we wanted to explore. I must admit that I resisted, and I don't think I voted for it if I remember, but it is what it is, and it was the times. And I don't know if it was meant to be into perpetuity. I think that, those resources that are being spent, could they be spent internally in the city? That's what's driving my decision on this.
And so on that comment, just briefly, I should have highlighted it during my budget implications. These funds are transferred from the general fund. And so if this IGA is terminated, we provide the notice, through the budget process, those funds would be available
Available
to
for
other
development.
general fund departments.
If we choose to do that, if that's what the budget committee, we're looking to streamline, the planning that we just finished. Focused on this as one of the topics is homelessness, about law enforcement, about all of these things. And it's a focus moving forward. I think we need to have availability of those funds to look at. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't make a proposal back to our budget committee and it goes through that process. But if we agree to this now, it's going to be for the full year without any choice. Right now, if we deny, we could still voluntarily commit some funds through the budget process, and that's still a possibility. So that's my thoughts.
To answer Counselor Richardson's question about what I thought is long-term, I didn't get to answer that part. Financial business generally 3 to 5 years is where I start looking with my pencil marks and whatnot. So that's what I think when I pass something that's supposedly long-term. And we've been at it 5 years. Should we be signing 20-year agreements? 15-year, 30-year agreements. I don't know. But I think this gives us an opportunity because our city manager was wise enough to bring it up, that we have an opportunity here to terminate this as it is. Let the budget committee, which has had a specific interest in it, give them the opportunity to hear a full presentation on the why and why not, and let our citizens come to a resolution on it. So this is an opportunity, not necessarily to not be involved with our partner, but maybe to find a better way to be involved with our partner. So I'm behind terminating this current agreement and bringing a full presentation as part of the budget committee's work.
I was here in 2019. I had just taken over as mayor. I don't recall any discussion about short-term or long-term arrangements. I do know that we were never told that we would be the only city in Oregon that provides similar funding for the.
No, we were not.
Attorneys. So I believe Councilor Long made that point as well. So, okay, any more discussion or questions,
If not, I'm ready to make a motion.
please?
I would move to direct the city manager to provide a notice of intent to terminate pursuant to Section 4 of the IGA between the City of the Dalles, Wasco County, and the County District Attorney's Office, and to begin discussions on a possible new IGA between the city. I should have put that differently, but you know what I mean. And begin new discussions for the provision of criminal prosecution services.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Long and seconded by Councilor Runyon to direct the city manager to provide a notice of intent to terminate the IGA between the city and the district attorney's office. Is there any more discussion?
I appreciated the second element of that motion particularly. Thank you.
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify that to the mayor that that it's a big part of my motion, that and can begin discussions.
Right.
Okay.
So noted. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Item 11C, a resolution to adopt a city evacuation plan. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Before I get into my staff report, I just want to mention to council that a couple of weeks ago, I spoke with Sheridan McClellan County's emergency manager, and he is going to be pursuing a grant from, I believe it was FEMA and the state for an update to our emergency operations plan. The current one, I believe, was from 2013. And the emergency evacuation plan has annexes, which are in essence checklists that are included in the emergency operations plan. And so when a new emergency operations plan gets developed, any annexes on that will be put in place of the annexes that are currently on the evacuation plan that you currently see before you. The other piece of that emergency operation plan update is a probable request for a letter of support from the city as well as other cities in the county, as the county seeks grant funding to put this emergency operation plan in place. So with that, I will get into my staff report. The previous or current, I should say, emergency evacuation plan was developed and adopted in 2014. I believe that was adopted administratively. I couldn't find any record of it being adopted otherwise. And it's missing quite a few details that would actually make it an effective evacuation plan. Those pieces are included in this evacuation plan before you. I'll say largely because I reached out to all the people that I thought had pieces that needed to go in here. And all of those people are listed in the paragraph on the first page of my staff report. Largely it's city, county staff, and then some folks at the state, emergency operations and Oregon Military Department, all of which were extremely helpful in developing this. the three big pieces that are in this plan that were not in the previous plan is identified routes for evacuation, both in narrative and on maps. The maps were not part of the previous evacuation plan. The other piece that is included in this would be the annexes at the end. Those are not on the current plan from 2014. And those were put in place following a tabletop that we had at the college a few months ago. And like I said, those will be swapped out if the annexes change with the new emergency operation plan. And lastly, the sort of included in my first one, but the maps themselves were not part of the current evacuation plan. This evacuation plan will be provided, has already been provided to the police chief, public works director, myself, city manager, city clerk, folks here in the city that needed to have a copy of it, basically. The others that will be provided a physical copy are going to be the fire chief, county emergency manager, Sheridan McClellan, and the county sheriff, and electronic copies that are not only searchable but have a linked index. We're already emailed to all of those parties, and the document you see before you will also be posted on the city website under the community tab on the website. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hunter? Oh, Counselor Long.
I just have one. So obviously a lot of thought and planning went into this by people that understand this. But I just had a question about the east side evacuation point being Calvary Baptist Church, which is across Highway 197, which in certain circumstances is kind of dangerous. And being that it's east of Dry Hollow Road, a lot of people would feel very close to the middle school. So is that because of the numbers of people and what you think you need the breakdown to be on the split up, or how did that come to be determined?
So the county currently has an agreement with the school district 21 to use the middle school.
Mhm.
Calvary Baptist Church was added as an additional evacuation shelter.
Mhm.
That is only if an evacuation from elsewhere in the city is required, and that's the closest, safest place for them to go. If we're looking at a citywide evacuation, we're getting completely out of town, whether that's Maupin, Dufur, Sherman County, or Hood River County, or some other place. If it's citywide, we're getting completely out of town. And so the shelter site for Calvary Baptist was selected for several reasons. One, because of the large land area that's available there, the large shelter or the structure that's there for a shelter site. And it was previously used for the evacuation of the veterans home this last summer during a fire.
Mhm.
And so that piece of it was why it was added as a potential site.
It doesn't, to me, and I'm not the person implementing the plan, but to me, the plan summary does not read that way. That it definitely says that east is going Calvary Baptist, and east is described actually as Aries East instead of areas east of Dry Hollow Road, including Brewery Grade Overpass. So if someone was reading that, this doesn't say what you just said. And obviously in an emergency plan, we need it to be like so clear that anybody can follow the plan.
So the east side evacuation would be the east side that is, if we were evacuating the east side, that evacuation area would follow the evacuation routes. They would not be going to a shelter within that section.
Okay.
Because east section is being evacuated, or east district is being evacuated.
Okay.
That clarify?
So if I may,
Yes, I'm just misinterpreting.
what could happen, what I'm seeing here is the first section on the plan summary details the evacuation routes. as Mr. Hunter was describing,
Mhm.
to leave the city limits. And
Yep.
these are the routes you
Mm.
would use depending on where you're at in the city itself. Intra-city shelter sites are used when complete evacuation of the city is unnecessary.
Sorry, I missed that part.
And
when I
so,
was looking at
you
that.
know,
Okay, yes.
that distinction there, which, you know, maybe we could highlight in a slight revision to the plan summary, separates those two. So if we're not evacuating completely from the city itself, we're evacuating a particular section of the city, this is where the intra-city site would be located.
Okay. But it probably is just fine. I just didn't, the word intracity, it just didn't jump out at me when I was reading it, but obviously the person implementing it would be thoroughly aware of it. So it's fine.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Councilman McLaughlin?
it's a well-designed, well-implemented plan. Couple things that, and I just bring this up not to question, but if we had a place during the last crisis that was the weather turned and was very cold, if we had an emergency shelter location that people could find housing, say, for example, their water lines were shut off, the electricity was shut off, traffic on the freeway, they would have a designated place within our city that people could go to seek shelter in emergency sits. And the Watonka campus to me seems like on the west side, it has a gymnasium that's not really utilized, well, partially, but it can be blocked off from the school. It has power, it has large size, it has a place. So I'm just, for your consideration, in looking for a short-term emergency shelter situation, that could be explored and work with the county and other emergency to add it to our smorgasbord.
If I could, I think you're talking about two separate things here. I think the cold weather shelter for those that are houseless is not an emergency evacuation. It's not part of this plan.
Correct. But to those people, it's quite emergency.
Sure.
If you're sleeping on the ground that's frozen. And so I'm just saying, the plan is great. And this is just one thing to consider in addition, and that would be an emergency, not an evacuation plan. I understand that. And anyway, I just wanted to add that, just for your consideration.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I can't help it. I went to the earthquake, section 2, page 140 of 212. And then I went to the next page and it said, after earthquake was on the other page, the next page said, this page left intentionally blank. So I thought, if there's an earthquake, we're gone. Ocean 2.
That I believe is in the annexes from our emergency operations plan. Not print those off in my packet because there's a blank.
There's got to be humor somewhere, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah. Yes, that it's well done.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt resolution 24-003, a resolution formally adopting a city evacuation plan and authorizing mandatory evacuations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been
I'll wake
moved,
up in second.
been moved by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to adopt the resolution adopting the city's evacuation plan. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice job. Any other business come before the city council?
Mayor Mays,
Yes,
may I do a quick shout out?
yes, you may.
Debbie Sandoz spearheaded the efforts to protect the lives of those people that found themselves without shelter. Hats off to Debbie and her volunteers that served a portion of our community. Kudos go out to these folks.
Thank you. Well said. Anybody else? Okay, with that, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Okay.
Remember? Getting rid of a lot of. But we understood that she came in and wanted to transition to